King Charles stands at a crossroads unlike anything Britain has seen in living memory. Within the next 48 hours, he must make the most consequential choice of his reign and perhaps in the entire modern history of the monarchy. Should he dissolve Parliament, using powers untouched for nearly 2 centuries? Or should he remain silent and risk the very survival of the crown itself? This is not idle speculation. Reliable palace insiders confirm that the king has been locked in marathon consultations with some of the nation's top constitutional lawyers. At the heart of those discussions lies a question Britain hasn't dared to confront since the year 1834. Does the monarch still hold the emergency authority to dismiss Parliament when the system itself has lost all public legitimacy? The legal answer, shockingly, is yes. For nearly 200 years, those powers have gathered dust. But they exist, and they were designed for precisely this kind of breakdown. In fact, the last monarch who used them, King William IV, dismissed the government against its will, sparking outrage but also resetting the balance of power. Now Charles faces the same impossible dilemma: act and risk being branded a tyrant, or refuse to act and watch millions of citizens question why Britain even needs a king at all. The numbers fueling this crisis are devastating. Confidence in Parliament has cratered to just 19%, an all-time low. The cost of living has spiraled, climbing 23% in just 2 years. Net migration has surged past 750,000 this year alone. And while ordinary families struggle to heat their homes, members of Parliament quietly awarded themselves a pay raise. The public reaction has been explosive. A banner draped across a motorway that read, "Charles, do your duty, sack these traitors," went viral, igniting a movement impossible to ignore. Hashtags demanding dissolution of Parliament have dominated social media for over a week. On TikTok alone, videos calling for royal intervention have generated tens of millions of views. Protest marches now stretch from Manchester to Cardiff. The chants are deafening: dissolve Parliament now. And these protesters aren't fringe radicals. They're teachers, shopkeepers, nurses, pensioners, ordinary Britons who feel utterly abandoned by a political class they no longer trust. Polling reveals just how much momentum this movement has gained. 43% of the country now supports the king dissolving Parliament directly. Among working-class voters, that number climbs to nearly 7 in 10. At the same time, more than a third of respondents say they would support abolishing the monarchy altogether if Charles refuses to act in this moment of crisis. The stakes could not be higher: intervene, and the monarchy risks charges of authoritarianism. Stay silent, and the institution may collapse from irrelevance. The tremors are being felt far beyond Britain. European leaders privately voice concern over political instability. The White House has issued carefully measured statements emphasizing respect for democratic norms. Financial markets are rattled, the pound has slid several points, government bond yields are spiking, and billions are leaving British investments. Constitutional experts remain bitterly divided. Advocates for royal action insist that when Parliament loses the trust of the people, the monarch is not only legally permitted but morally obliged to step in. Detractors warn that such an act would ignite the gravest constitutional crisis since the English Civil War, erasing centuries of careful royal neutrality. Even within Buckingham Palace, advisors are split. Older courtiers urge restraint, warning that intervention could irreparably shatter the monarchy's image. Younger strategists argue the opposite, that doing nothing in a national emergency is itself a political decision, one that could be fatal to the institution's future. Meanwhile, pressure mounts from across society. Over 15,000 military veterans have signed petitions demanding Charles dissolve Parliament, with retired generals stating that extraordinary times call for extraordinary leadership. Trade unions are breaking ranks, openly declaring that Westminster has abandoned working families. The Federation of Small Businesses reports that a vast majority of its members favor early elections. Even senior church figures, while urging wisdom in public, are said to be advising privately that the king may need to act. Every day of hesitation compounds the crisis. Cabinet ministers are fracturing, backbench rebellions are multiplying, and insiders warn the government's position may soon become untenable with or without royal intervention. If Charles steps forward, he could restore faith in Britain's institutions by demonstrating that the monarchy still serves the people, not the political elite. If he refuses, he risks turning the crown into nothing more than a powerless relic. The legal mechanics are murky but crucial. The 2011 Fixed-Term Parliaments Act technically transferred dissolution powers away from the monarch, but constitutional scholars argue that in times of extreme emergency, the ancient royal prerogatives could still be revived. If Charles invokes them, he wouldn't just be making a political judgment, he'd be rewriting the constitutional playbook for generations to come. The global implications are staggering. Leaders across the Commonwealth are watching closely. Canadian scholars and former Australian governors-general have quietly flown to London for private discussions, knowing that whatever Charles decides could ripple through every constitutional monarchy on earth. A bold move in Britain could inspire similar calls for royal intervention abroad. And then there's the power of digital media. Traditional broadcasters dismiss the dissolution movement as reckless populism, with editorials in major papers branding it constitutional vandalism. But online, a completely different story unfolds. Independent commentators, YouTubers, and TikTok creators have amassed hundreds of millions of views, outpacing mainstream outlets by a wide margin. The message is clear: Britain's establishment may oppose royal action, but the people are increasingly demanding it. The divide is stark. In London, closer to the centres of power, support for dissolution is muted. But in the Midlands, the North, and Wales, backing consistently exceeds 60%, peaking at 75% in some former industrial towns. Older Britons remain torn between tradition and urgency, while younger voters, many normally skeptical of the monarchy, are rallying behind dissolution as the only way to force systemic change. This is not just another political standoff. It is the most serious test of Britain's constitutional monarchy since Edward VIII abdicated in 1936. But this time, the stakes go far beyond personal scandal. This time, it is the very survival of British democracy that hangs in the balance. Within days, perhaps hours, King Charles will speak. His decision could either reinforce the monarchy as a safeguard in times of crisis, or trigger its downfall as a powerless symbol. History will judge whether he chose the people crying out for help, or the political class that has already failed them. The next 48 hours will decide not just the future of Charles's reign, but perhaps the fate of constitutional monarchy in the modern world. So the question is, what should he do? Should the king dissolve parliament and force new elections? Or should he remain above the fray, even if that means watching Britain descend further into chaos? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more in-depth political commentary, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the world of power and politics. Thanks for watching.